Chairperson singing the national anthem for us.
Hey guys, you can stand up. Thank you. Alright, you guys ready? By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
All right, y'all. How we doing? Wow, this is really scary. But, anyways, on behalf of Planning Board, Yukon FASA, District 2, thank you very much for coming out today. It really means the world for us that you are all here today. So, a quick shout out to all y'all for making the trek here to Yukon. I also want to give a quick shout out to my family. They made the trek here today to see me deliver this speech, and it really means the world to me. Mom, Dad. Alright, so let's get started. So, what is Dialogue 2018? Dialogue 2018, to us, you grow through your actions, you know? So today, you will dive deep into your past, and you'll learn more about yourself, and you will realize just how influential your upbringing is. The past has shaped you, more than you could have ever have imagined. You'll come to terms with why you are the way that you are, and then continue the process of growth and development. You will look at your current self, and realize that in order to grow, you must go through adversities, hardships, and struggles. Then, with this knowledge, you will begin to develop your own sense of activism and find that the future is truly in your hands. But first, I'm going to share with you all a little story. A story unfamiliar to just about everyone that I know. This is my story. Again, as many of y'all know, I'm Christian Marquez, District 2's National Director, as well as a National External Vice Chair for FINE. But these labels don't define me. I am more than the preconceived notions that these labels bring. More than that. I'm a brother, a son, a friend, a mentee, a mentor, a student, an EMT, and just about everything in between. And yeah, even a Lolo. These are all titles that have just defined me. But again, as you will learn today, there is more to a person than just a title. Let's rewind to about a year and a half ago, shortly after having taken my finals. A year and a half ago, I was battling a severe relapse of depression. My freshman year was a total disaster. It had not gone well for me, and my life wasn't really going in any sort of positive direction. My parents and I fought a lot, and my grades were just nowhere near acceptable to me. I was upset at myself, and I was upset at the world. Once again, I had completely fallen apart. I thought that I was irreparable, and I only had one thing in mind, and that was to end it all. I was prepared and committed to take the final steps to end my life. But I didn't. At the very last moment, I had received a text from one of my friends that I hadn't heard from in a very, very long time. That text read, "Hey bro, I'm just checking in on you. How you doing?" We hadn't hit each other up in a very long time, so this came as a total surprise to me. But that text saved my life. That text prevented me from total self-destruction. We talked. I opened up about my battles and my scars and how I felt utterly worthless and empty. "Christian," he said, "you need to take time for yourself and redevelop yourself. What happened this year was beyond your control, but now it is your time to plant a new seed and grow. The results may not show now, but they will in ways that you could have never have imagined before." I thought about it long and hard, but I listened to him. I began the process to rediscover myself. Finding myself proved to be much more difficult than I had expected. I searched endlessly to find my true values. Soul searching was a relentless and exhausting effort. I looked into my past and I was forced to acknowledge my weakness and come face to face with what had bogged me down for so long. I knew what I had to do. I distanced myself from everyone but my family and cut my ties off to the world for 2 months. I came clean with my parents about my struggles and the state of my mental health. I saw my own dad break into tears for the first time in my life. He saw himself as a failure and was upset that he wasn't there for me in the darkest moments of my life. I saw my mom acknowledge the harsh realities of battling a mental illness, and she helped me seek the resources where needed. I continuously battled relapses and major setbacks on a regular basis, so I decided to take treatment to the next level, and I began therapy. Things started to come together. Bit by bit, I started finding myself. I found that I enjoyed giving back to people and bringing people together. I enjoyed speaking for those who are afraid to speak for themselves. I found that photography is a pretty dope hobby when you know what you're doing. And I found that the medical field would be the career that I would be dedicating my entire life towards. But the biggest thing was yet to come. About a year ago, Chandler told me that District 2 was looking for new fine reps, and we could start something big. To be quite honest, I wasn't really all that into it, but he told me about his grand vision that we were destined to do something big. We had to take charge of ourselves, and from there, growth would happen the way it's meant to happen. After 2017's dialogue, District 2 was contemplating taking up Dialogue 2018. Originally, I was really skeptical. I didn't really know that much about FIND, and I was afraid to take another leadership position within FOSSA itself. But in the end, I asked myself, why not? And truly, why not? Because of that vision, we are here today, in front of all of you, ready to hear your stories, your struggles, your triumphs, your victories, and your losses. Through those first steps, bigger things have come. Without my friend, Dialogue wouldn't be here. District 2 would be an unrecognized district, and I wouldn't be here giving you this speech today. My past molded me and shaped me into the very person that is before you today, telling his own story. My lowest points taught me more about myself than my highs ever could. Each of you all have a story to tell, a story that is in no doubt a work in progress. You will learn to remove the mask that a title gives you and learn that there is more to you and your peers than you have realized. This is the beginning. The future is here and the future is now. I urge you to look into yourselves and find yourselves. Meet others along the way. Take a moment and listen to each other. Learn from each other and help each other grow. And in the end, we will make the greater community a better place. Mark my words, everyone. We will change the world. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Dialogue.
Good morning, everyone. Like I said, my name is Angelique, but you can call me Jelly. I'm District 2's National Director, one of them. That's my co over there who just gave a speech. And I'm the Content Tri-Chair of this year's Fall Dialogue. First and foremost, being able to stand here before you all is such an incomparable feeling. We've been putting this together since the month after last Dialogue in 2017, and if any of y'all went to that, which coincidentally happened to be my first Dialogue ever. So thank you for making the trip out to the University of Connecticut. We welcome you with open arms. My heritage has always been something that I held near and dear to my heart. Going into college, I decided that I wanted my culture to be a more prominent force in my life. And I wanted to remember where I came from, so I could then decide where I would go. I often used to compare myself to the girl I used to be when I was in high school, because somehow 18-year-old me apparently knew how life was supposed to play out. However, a lot of change has happened in the past few years of my life, and I've always considered myself a pioneer for self-growth. I used to be really hard on myself for changing, that in order for you to be true to yourself, you needed to be the same consistent person at all times, when in fact I had it all wrong. True growth cannot come without change, and change cannot persist unless I actually stand up and do something. And if I stopped comparing myself to the girl I used to be, I'd be a lot happier with the woman I am becoming. And that's not to say I have it all figured out, but I have learned a lot about myself, my cultural identity, and what that means to me along the way. I continue to learn every day of my life, especially that it's not okay to have all the answers. To any of you here feeling lost about your identity in any aspect, please know that you're allowed to be a constant work in progress. This is your youth. Your journey to self-growth is a long and winding road, and it will never stop. I wrote this speech over the course of the summer when I was reflecting on why this was so important to me. I get to connect with people I have never met before who might have gone through the same experiences as I and felt the same things at the same time. And that makes me feel a little less lonely in my little Filipino world. I may never get to do this again. And Find Incorporated is an endless fountain of opportunity, and their conferences and dialogues are the platform for students like you and I. You are a force. Once we realize that we're more than capable to incite change or impact another person, Filipino or Filipino American or not, that is when we become aware of our true power. That is why Find means so much to me. That's why this is like our baby. This dialogue, this specially curated dialogue, is so unique for someone like me, who has never been a director of anything in her life. Mga kababayan, we all have a million different stories that demand to be told. They are all important, and they are all valid. My hope is that this dialogue inspires you to tell your story with certainty, and then to ask others about theirs. Because whether you realize it or not, they might be a lot more similar than you think. I hope if that there's anything that you take home from this dialogue, it's that the future is yours, and it's your actions that will get you there. So as you go through our workshops today, I want you to take advantage of this opportunity to say what you want to say. There's no better time or place to do it than here. Welcome to UConn, and welcome to Fine Dialogue 2018.
Hello. Real quick, if you guys haven't seen yet, we have 3 social media challenges out. They've been posted on the Facebook page. I'll read them out real quick. So challenge 1 is take a picture with your moderators, take a picture with the Husky statue on campus, and take a picture at our photo booth. Post all these pictures on your Insta story, tag Find Inc, and use the hashtag HalikaD2. Challenge number 2, take a picture with someone from a different district than your own and post a fun fact about them on your Insta story. Mention both of your districts in the post, tag at Find Inc, as well as the hashtag HalikaD2 again. And then the third challenge, find out 3 tri chairs, you met the other 2, and take a picture with each of them. Post your pictures with each tri chair on the Insta story, the same thing, tag Find Inc, and put the hashtag HalikaD2. And we will have 3 lucky individuals who will be winning 3 $50 gift cards, or they'll be winning 1 each from Amazon. So good luck. I believe they're from Amazon, actually. I'm not too sure where they're from. Oops. So yeah, best of luck to anyone trying out for the social media challenge. And also, quick shout out to Dunkin' Donuts, Insomnia Cookies, and Dog Lane Cafe for helping us put on this event. Alright, so yeah, it's me, Chandler, your finance tri-chair again. I want to start off by saying thank you to Jelly and Christian for setting the tone for today. I'll keep this one a little short and sweet, not as serious, so we can get the day rolling. As one of UConn FASA's co-presidents, on the behalf of our entire organization, I would love to give you all a warm welcome to our home here in Storrs, Connecticut. It's usually a little more pretty. The weather is not too pretty right now, but this is like the prettiest time of the year with the foliage. It is with our greatest pleasure that we are bringing dialogue back to D2, with this being UConn's second dialogue since 2015. Before we start the rest of the day, I would like to share with you all a little piece of UConn FASA. Here at FASA, we have something called our 6 F's. The 6 F's of FASA are family, friends, Filipino, food, fun, and forever. Become a part of our family, make new friends, embrace the Filipino culture, eat food, have fun, forever. The first F, family. By coming here today, you all have become a part of our FASA family, or how we like to say, FASAmilia. After this, we head into our breakout rooms to spend a day within our smaller families, engage in dialogue, and begin to form bonds that will last. Well, we'll get to that F soon. Friends. How many times in a year do you all go to an event where you can meet so many new people, all from different places, yet bounded together by a common theme? This takes me to the next F, Filipino. While we accept anyone into our family, regardless of race or any other differences, we are bound together by our common interest in the rich Filipino culture. Food. Who doesn't love food? Food brings people together. I urge you all to grab a bite during lunch with some new friends you've never met before. Trust me, it'll be fun. Fun! I don't know about you guys, but I love fun. And I love having fun, and I truly think today will be filled with lots of it. For the last F, the most impactful for me, forever. Forever because the friends we meet today, the bonds we form, the memories we make, the actions we take, will last forever. With that being said, I welcome you all to Dialogue 2018. At the end of this, we can all say, we've been he and done that. Alright, I'm a little bit interested have from each district in here. So some other people in the overflow room, but let's see how many people from each district we have in this room.
Oh God.
Do we have anybody from the lovely District 1? Thanks for coming. D2, my homies. D3. To be honest, I don't think enough of you guys came. D4, where you at, homies? D5, where you at, D6? D7? And District 8? Wow, they came all the way from Florida.
Florida Georgia Line.
Now I would like to give the stage to our lovely keynote speaker, Dr. Kevin Nadal.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. When I say Mabu, you say hi, Mabu. Hi. Mabu. Hi. When I say Mabu, you say hey, Mabu. Hey. Mabu. Hey. Awesome. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. You all keep me young. This is amazing. My first find that I went to was in 1998. Go ahead, do the math. I was about 5 years old. No, I wasn't. I was a college student, and I remember coming to my first find, just being so energized and feeling so seen and loved, and feeling like I finally saw a lot of other people who experienced some of the same things that I did, and so it was just such a life-changing experience to be at that first find. So I hope you all remember this moment in time, because when you get to be my age, you'll reflect on it, and then you'll see the new delegates of Find 48 or whatever, and you'll tell them that they keep you young. They'll have like email in their eyeballs and stuff, but it'll be all good. So today I want to talk about a little bit about my journey. I know that this weekend you're all going to be talking about growth and reflections, and so I thought it might be helpful for me to reflect upon some of my experiences so that you all can see what it's like to look back, know where you've been, and see what are some of the possibilities of where you can go. So I like to use a little wordplay. So finding your power, understanding, thank you. Understanding that you all have power, and even when it feels like you might not, that there's always power that you can have and find even more. So I like to start off by, does this work? Did I turn it off? Maybe I did. By saying maraming salamat to the ancestors, to recognize those who have trailblazed and have gotten us to where we are today. In terms of our Filipino Americans, I think about people like Filipino Cruz, people like Larry Itliong. They are part of the United Farm Workers movement, which is considered one of the most successful labor movements in American history and perhaps even world history. Without them, we would not be here today. Filipino Americans would not have the rights that they have today. And so to know that they were able to advocate against systemic oppression in the farms of California, and that they really advocated for our rights. I like to recognize some of our queer people of color who have really moved us forward as well. So people like James Baldwin and Audre Lorde and Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, that being a person of color is already so hard, having intersectional identities, whether it be your LGBTQ identity, being a woman, being a person with disability, and so forth, that sometimes that makes the world even harder to navigate. And so recognizing that there have been trailblazers who have fought for us to be seen and heard and to have the equities that we have today. Finally, I want to recognize the indigenous tribes on whose land we are on today. We are on Mohegan lands, I believe, and to recognize that we are merely occupants, and this is their sacred land, and we ask permission for us to be here today and to celebrate being Filipino American while honoring that we're in their space. I like to honor the Filipino American trailblazers who have personally touched my life. These are folks like Fred and Dorothy Cordova, who were the founders of the Filipino American National Historical Society. FONS was established in 1982, and they're the reasons why we celebrate Filipino American History Month, which is right now. So happy Filipino American History Month. It's not Filipino American Heritage Month, it's Filipino American History Month. And I make that distinction because it's important for us to know that we are celebrating the history of Filipino Americans in the United States. The history of the contributions that Filipino Americans have made here in the US. That Filipino American history is American history. That Filipino American history is world history. We have Filipino Americans like Larry Itliong and Filipino Cruz, who were part of the United Farm Workers. We have Filipinos like Vicky Manalo-Draves, who was the first Pinay to win a gold medal in 1938. We have Filipino Americans who fought for ethnic studies 50 years ago at San Francisco State University, which is why we have ethnic studies now across the United States. So without Filipino Americans who have really made their mark here in the US, we would not have all the things that we have. And so we honor our history, our contributions, our voices, making sure that the rest of the country knows that we are here and that we've been here and that we will continue to grow and mark our place here in this country. I also want to just shout out my parents. Anytime I get a chance, I recognize my parents and the sacrifices that they've made. My parents immigrated to the United States in the 1960s. They were among the first Filipinos who were allowed to come to the United States after there was the end to a quota that was put on most Asian countries. So prior to 1965, for about 30 years, there was a quota for the number of Filipinos and those from other Asian countries that could come to the United States, and that number was 50. 50 people per year from Asian countries could come to the United States. So that is way less than the number of people in this room. And so for you all to recognize that when we see things happening today, and when people are trying to put quotas and bans on people from other countries coming here to the US, that this has happened before, and this has happened to our people. And so we need to make sure that we don't forget our past, and that we advocate for the same equal rights for other folks that we were able to have for ourselves. My parents came here to the US with very little. They came here without knowing anyone who was here. They came in the 1960s when there weren't very many Filipinos here. But they did so because they were hoping that their hypothetical children would be able to live their American dream. My parents grew up in poverty in the Philippines, in Aklan, Philippines. Anyone from Aklan? Visayas, come on, no one? Boracay, that's where Aklan is. All right, awesome. Go visit, say hi to my cousins. But they came here with virtually nothing. They lived in rural Philippines. They didn't have running water growing up. They were children of World War II. And they sacrificed everything to come to this country so that their children who weren't even born yet, which includes me, that we could have the things that they didn't have. So when you think about your own parents, think about the sacrifice that they may have made, your parents, your grandparents, whoever it is that immigrated here. Would you move to another country because you thought it would be a better decision or better life for your hypothetical children, not knowing anyone, not knowing if you would ever see them again? And would you do so with the fear and the potential isolation that many of them went through in order for us to have what we have? I want to give a shout out to Dr. Don Boholano Mabalon. Dr. Mabalon was a professor of history at San Francisco State University. She unexpectedly passed away in August in Hawaii. Dr. Mabalon is Filipino-American history. In fact, Dr. Mabalon is Filipina American history. She is the reason why we are understanding the many contributions of Filipino Americans, particularly those who worked in the farms of California. She was born and raised in Stockton, and with her, she was able to do research to understand some of the stories and atrocities that Filipino American farm workers went through during the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. She was one who was also historic preservationist. When gentrification started to happen in Stockton, California. Stockton, California, which was formerly the most populated city of Filipino Americans in the United States. She fought for Little Manila, the historic part of Stockton, to be saved. And now Little Manila is a historic landmark in the US. And so to understand that you can be just a young Filipina American who has a voice, who is able to advocate for our people, and that you can make things happen. So please look up Dr. Don Boholano Mabalon. She's done so much for us. She's an author, a writer, a poet, an activist, and she is somebody who you all should know because she is our history. In fact, the first time I ever heard Dr. Mabalon speak was at that Fines Conference in 1998, and it forever changed the rest of my life. So I honor her and dedicate the rest of my talk to her. Can we give her a round of applause, please? So it's Filipino-American History Month, and I hope you're all celebrating across your various campuses. And one of the things that I think is really important for us to emphasize about Filipino-American History Month is that we have been here for a long time, and we've been here before the United States were even the United States. The first Filipinos landed in the United States in Morro Bay, California in 1587. That was 30 years before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. So when we think about the United States and its history, and people think about it being something that was discovered by Columbus or discovered by the Pilgrims, to know that Filipinos been here. We're like, hey, where you been? Because this is who we were. This is how we got here. There were Filipinos that were escaping slave galleon ships that were trading between Spain and the Philippines. And so they wanted to escape the atrocities of those ships, and they landed in Morro Bay, California. They didn't really settle. They were, some of them were attacked, and they weren't able to really mark their grounds there. But future generations, in 1700s, there were Filipinos who also were traveling among these trade ships, and they escaped, and they landed in the bayous of Louisiana. And they were able to form communities in Louisiana in the late 1700s, and they formed communities there. So if you go to Louisiana, you could see where the Filipinos used to live, or they have historic landmarks of where they used to live, and that there are people today that identify as 10th generation Filipino American. They might not look Filipino anymore because they've had lots of intermarriage and mixing, but they still identify as being Filipino American. And that also just goes to show how deep it is to be Filipino American. Somebody's like, I'm 10th generation, because it's so amazing to be Filipino, right? So they want to claim it as much as they can, but to recognize that this is part of our history. So what I encourage you all to do as we talk further and as you go on for the rest of this conference is not just to understand Filipino American history and some of these names and people that I told you about, but to also understand your own histories. When you think about your own families, do you know the circumstances in which your parents or grandparents came into the United States? Do you know what it was like for them? Do you know some of the struggles and some of the sacrifices they had to make? Ask them. I know it might not be as fun or cool to talk to your parents sometimes, but they are walking history books. Ask them about their experiences. And ask them about their experiences soon, because you don't want to ever wonder what their experiences were like. Many of us who are people my age, in our 20s, no, just kidding, people my age and older, we sometimes regret not having had the opportunity to talk to people while they were alive. And so please take advantage of what you have and talk to people about their histories, because all of your histories are part of Filipino American history, and it's important for you all to share your histories with others. I want to talk a little bit about my personal upbringing and my beginnings. I am the youngest of 3 boys, obviously the cutest. I mean, look at that bowl haircut, that's amazing. But as the child of immigrants, one of the things that I learned from a very early age was that I had to navigate what it meant to be both Filipino and American. I had to navigate what it meant to be both Filipino and American, which meant at home, I learned everything about being Filipino, from the food that we ate, to my parents speaking Aklan or Tagalog, and me not fully understanding what they were saying except for the curse words, to knowing things like respecting your elders, and knowing how to manopol, and maybe even learning how to tinikling, and do all these different cultural dances. So I knew what it meant to be Filipino. But then as a kid, I would go to school and I would learn that being Filipino was different and odd, and that maybe I had to blend in. And so I had to learn how to be more American. And so this is where I learned about Saturday morning cartoons and who was the most popular rap stars or singers at the time. And I just had to blend in. And this is something that Filipino Americans and most people, children of immigrants, what we do without even thinking about it. It's called code switching, where you learn that you have to switch who you are and what your interests are and how you behave in different environments. It's something that I do today as an adult, where sometimes at home I might speak in a certain way, I might make certain jokes that are appropriate for home, but when I'm in a professional setting, I have to switch. And maybe even my voice changes, my vocabulary changes, my demeanor changes. And that's just part of what it means to be Filipino American. It means that you're navigating all of these different things. I imagine the ways that you're acting right now, it might be different than how you might act in a classroom, might be different how you act at work, and this is something that you're doing too. But one of the things that always baffles me is that for children of immigrants, we learn to do this really young. We're doing this when we're 5 years old, learning how to navigate these systems. And so that's a lot of pressure for a kid. And in many ways, that pressure is what led to the resilience that makes all of us who we are. But it's also something that I think we can make easier for future generations, that we all can teach them that it's okay to have multiple identities, cultural backgrounds, that we are celebrating being Filipino and American. And that's something that we should instill in them right away so that they never have to feel ashamed of who they are. Being Filipino American is very special because it means you get to take a little bit of being Filipino, a little bit of being American, and making something even more special and even more amazing. Being Filipino American means going to a Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC as I think it's now called, and getting the chicken at the restaurant, but never eating it there because you gotta go home and eat it with rice. Right? Being Filipino American, it means knowing how to do both the tinikling and also know how to dance hip hop and maybe sometimes make a fusion called tinikling hip hop. Being Filipino American is something that you all do every single day. And so what is it that we all can do to support each other, to uplift each other, so that it becomes something that can become even greater and that we can even share even more community with other folks. Growing up as a child of immigrants, I learned a lot of different messages. I learned about what it's like to be a Filipino American. I learned about gender roles from a very early age. I learned that I was supposed to be masculine and tough, and that boys weren't supposed to cry, which was the total opposite of what I wanted to be as a kid. I mean, if you look at my pictures, I'm fabulous. I mean, come on. When I came out of the closet to my parents when I was in my 20s, my mom says, "Oh my gosh, we did not know." And I was like, "Really, Mom? Do you see the hand on that hip? That triangle pose is amazing." But I learned lots of negative messages, which then negatively influenced me, made me think that I wasn't good enough, made me feel like I wasn't, that I was a punishment from God or something about me was wrong. That meshed in with being Filipino American, where I didn't see anyone who looked like me on television or movies, where I didn't have any teachers or role models who were Filipino, and where kids made fun of things that I did that were Filipino. One of my earliest memories is going to school, like in first grade, and bringing a chicken adobo, and the kids making fun of me and saying that it smelled, and me being really embarrassed about that. I mean, these days, I eat chicken adobo or any Filipino food, the stinkier the better. I want everything to smell, because I want you to be jealous that you ain't getting any of mine. But back then, it was something I was so ashamed of, and so I'm balancing all of these different identities, and that was a struggle. But again, what can we do for future generations where we can make sure they don't have to go through that sort of struggle? Growing up, I grew up in California. Anyone from California? Awesome. I always give shout outs to the Californians, like, that's amazing, you made it to the East Coast. Your parents are probably worried sick about you. But take it in, like, enjoy the East Coast. I came to the East Coast 20 years ago and never went back. But I also recognize that my roots are in California, and growing up in the Filipino American community in California, I was just surrounded by Filipinos all the time. My high school was about 50% Filipino American, but that sounds great, but what the sad part was that we only had one Filipina teacher, and she taught world history, and she didn't even teach us Filipino history or Filipino American history because the curriculum didn't allow her to. And so to understand that even if you have a lot of Filipinos in one place, if the systems aren't built for us, then we're not going to be able to thrive in the ways that we could. Being Filipino American was great. Like, we had a great sense of identity. My friends, we all understood each other. We can make fun of each other's parents and our accents, and it was just something that we all did. But we didn't really know about our histories. It wasn't until I went to college that I really started to think about being Filipino American. I took ethnic studies classes. I joined Filipino American college student organizations. I went to places like FIND, and that's where I started to really think to myself that my community is very important to me, and that there are so many things that I can do to advance our communities. I grew up Filipino American, and being Filipino also means growing up brown, which means that a lot of times people don't know what the fuck you are, right? So we straddle between people knowing that we're Asian American to people thinking we're Pacific Islander. Sometimes people think we're Latino and start speaking Spanish to us. Sometimes people think we're mixed with black. Some people think that we're Arab or Middle Eastern, and this is a very common experience. Research finds that Filipino Americans are often mistaken for every racial group group possible. And so with that, to understand how does that influence our identity? Well, one thing that happens is that Filipino Americans tend to have historic coalition building with other racial groups. That there is a history of coalition building between Filipinos and African Americans, Filipinos and Latinos. In fact, Filipinos and Latinos, our history is embedded in so many different ways, not just because of colonialism and Spanish influence and Catholicism, but also in our activism. That alongside Mary Itliong was Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who fought for our civil rights and for farm workers' equities. And so to recognize that to be Filipino means that we can get along with everyone, and that we oftentimes are navigating so many different spaces, and at the same time being very proud of being Filipino American. Growing up in college is where I learned about ethnic studies, and that's something that I hope that all of you can advocate for on your own campuses. We need ethnic studies. There are lots of research studies that find that ethnic studies and taking ethnic studies classes actually makes you more successful. That if you have an ethnic studies class where you're able to learn about yourself and your history, and you're able to feel proud of who you are as a Filipino American, as a person of color, as an Asian American, that you are going to do better in terms of your grades. And so if your classes, or if they don't offer ethnic studies classes in your universities, question why. Advocate for it. The ethnic studies started out of student activism. Ethnic studies started from sit-ins in presidents' offices. So if that's what you all need to do, then you need to channel the ancestors from the 1960s who did that first, and advocate for ethnic studies. I want to talk a little bit about being intersectional. I know I'm running out of time. Being intersectional is this idea of balancing your multiple identities. And if you're a Filipino American and you're a woman, or if you're Filipino American and you're queer or trans, Filipino American, person with disability, Filipino American Muslim, there are ways in which these different identities impact us. Sometimes it means that you're experiencing multiple types of discrimination. Sometimes it means experiencing discrimination within your own group. So for me, being Filipino American, growing up in the 90s especially, that it was bad to be queer or gay in Filipino American communities. So I might experience homophobia in Filipino American communities. At the same time, if I went to the general LGBTQ community, I would experience racism. And so for people who have multiple identities, sometimes we're navigating so many different things. For women, Pinays, in our community, you have to deal with so much of this toxic masculinity within Filipino American culture. And so men, you all need to stop that. And you all need to be the real allies here, and make sure that your other friends, your brothers, your cousins, that they don't engage in toxic masculinity either. Because Pinays are the heart of our community, and the more that you bring them down, the less our community thrives. So please support your sister community. One of the things I want to say about being intersectional also is that sometimes it means that you need to make your voices heard in a place that might not necessarily accept you. These are some of the organizations that I've been part of. I was the first openly gay president of the Asian American Psychological Association, and I was the first executive director of color of the Center for LGBTQ Studies. And I say this not to boast, but to say that that's a problem. That Asian American Psych Association now is close to 50 years old, and I became their president just 5 years ago. The Center for LGBTQ Studies is almost 30 years old, and I was executive director just a couple years ago. So why are we still having a lot of these firsts? Why is it that we're not seeing more people with intersectional identities thriving in a lot of our different organizations? I'm a full professor. There are 20 Filipino American full professors in the United States. 20. And so when we think about that, we have to question, why is it that systemically there are not many Filipino American full professors? Raise your hand if you have ever had a Filipino American professor. Raise them high, raise them proud. Look at the room. Why isn't every single person in here raising their hand? And so what are we doing to ensure that there can be more Filipino American professors? How has the system made it difficult for Filipino Americans to become professors? How have we ourselves made it difficult for Filipino Americans to become professors? In your families, a lot of times it's encouraged for you to go into certain fields, to go into medicine and nursing, which is great and fine, but I know some of y'all don't want to do that. I know some of y'all don't want to be a nurse and you'd rather be part of like the Jabberwockies or something, right? And so that's what I want you all to think about, is if there's something that you want to do, if you're passionate about becoming a professor, if you're passionate about becoming an artist, we need you to do that. Because we need to be represented across all of the different sectors, and we need to make sure that our voices are represented in every aspect. And so in academia especially, we need you. We need Filipino American professors, because if you don't see Filipino American professors, how can future generations know that they can be Filipino American professors? So thank you. The last, or not last thing, one of the last things I'll talk about is being the first. Being the first is something that I never planned to be or do. I'm the first in my family to get a PhD, first in my family to become a professor, first in my family to make 6 figures or more. And I'm saying that because this should not be something that we have to celebrate. It should not be something that we have to celebrate. We should have most of us that are doing well, most of us who are getting the higher degrees, most of us who are making good money. But the problem is that many of us don't, and that it becomes something that becomes unattainable. And so I share this with you because I want you all to know that it is attainable, but that you have to work hard for it, and that you have to be passionate about it. And that sometimes you're going to have to be a first too. And I show this picture. This is a picture of me from President Obama's White House, the good White House. But I say that because my parents, I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, were immigrants. They grew up with nothing. They were poor. They had no running water. And their child is speaking at the White House. And this shows that you all, and I don't even really need to talk but this shows that if you all work hard enough, that you can make your dreams come true, and not only for yourself, but for your families, your parents, the people that sacrificed for you to get where you are today. I have a very good friend, Dr. Alicia Del Prado, who's a professor at the Wright Institute in Berkeley, and she says that her Lolo, who immigrated to the United States, when he was alive, every time he saw her, he would say, "So, how's the harvest?" And what that meant was that he came here with nothing, he worked in the fields or did manual labor, and so he planted the seeds. His children were able to sow and garden and reap the seeds, reap the crops, or do whatever they did to make sure that those seeds grew. And it was her generation where the harvest actually was produced. And sometimes it's something that most people will not see in the next generation. But it's something that maybe we need to let them see in this generation. So to know that it's not even just about you. For me, any of my successes is not just about me. It's about the people who came before me, the trailblazers, my parents, my grandparents, and all the people who sacrificed for me to get to where I am. All of my successes are their successes. And I hope that you all recognize that all of your successes are your families and your ancestors' successes too. I like to tell people just this notion of I am my ancestors' greatest accomplishment. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And this is a quote that other people have been using. You can get a t-shirt. I have a t-shirt too. And I'm getting profit from that or anything, so I'm just saying. But to think about how can you be your ancestors' wildest dreams? Filipino Americans have gone through so much. Our people in the Philippines went through atrocities, violence, wars. They were colonized, they were killed, they were brutalized, they were forced into religion that wasn't theirs. They were forced into a culture that taught them to hate themselves. Your parents, your grandparents came to the United States. They faced discrimination, they faced oppression, they faced so many other difficulties in being here and trying to give you a better life. And so they fought for you all. And so for you, going to school, finishing college, perhaps going to grad school, med school, law school, being your best selves, you too can be your ancestors' wildest dreams. And I hope that you all remember where you come from always. And I hope that you all make sure that everyone knows that it is amazing and fabulous to be Filipino American. So happy Filipino American History Month. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat.